September 12, 2025, astronomers were stunned by a revelation. A massive object, unlike anything seen before, was speeding in from deep space, its tail stretching 5 times the width of the full moon. The sheer size and scale of this object dwarfed any previous interstellar visitor, including Oumuamua. Just hours after this discovery, another strange object was confirmed, racing toward the sun. Both of these visitors arriving from opposite ends of the sky, yet they seem to be on a direct course toward the solar system. The odds of two massive objects, both speeding towards the sun, entering the inner solar system in tandem, were nearly impossible to calculate. Experts were at a loss. The official story? Twin comets. But the evidence hinted at something far more complex, something deliberately engineered. And the questions began to pile up. What is this object? Is it a coincidence? Or is it part of a larger, more mysterious mission? On September 12, 2025, the SH spacecraft's S-SWAN instrument captured something so bizarre, it left astronomers in shock. A bright object, unmistakable, blazing across the sky, unlike anything they had seen before. Within hours, scientists began receiving data. The tail alone stretched a staggering 2.5 degrees across the sky, roughly 5 times the size of the full moon. To put that in perspective, this kind of size was unheard of for a newly discovered comet. By September 13th, the astronomical community was already buzzing. The International Astronomical Union quickly named the object C/2025 R2, tagging it SW in honor of the instrument that first detected it. Amateur astronomers, armed with telescopes and binoculars, quickly turned their attention to this newly discovered object. A few days after the discovery, a photograph was taken in Australia, capturing the object's trail a streak so long it almost spilled out of the frame. But this object wasn't just another comet. This was something else. Amateur astronomers began to notice unusual patterns. This was not the typical comet behavior they had grown accustomed to. Comets are usually faint, needing powerful telescopes to spot them. But this one, dubbed SWAN, was bright enough to be seen with the naked eye. Its tail, slicing through the constellation Virgo, grew brighter and more prominent as it approached the sun. The initial reaction from the scientific community was one of disbelief. As researchers and amateur astronomers delved deeper into the data, questions began to arise. What could possibly cause a comet to have such an enormous tail? The object was simply too big, too bright, and too fast for astronomers to ignore. And as the telescopes continued to track its path, the focus shifted from what the object was to why it had arrived at this specific moment. Was its timing part of something much more complicated? But what was even more mind-blowing was the sudden revelation that it wasn't just SWAN making its way toward the sun. Just days before SWAN's discovery, another strange object, 3I/Atlas, was detected on a completely different trajectory, coming from the opposite side of the sky. If you looked at a star map, the paths of these two objects were separated by more than a quarter of the celestial sphere. And yet, both objects were on a direct course for the sun, reaching their closest point within just days of each other. SWAN's perihelion, the closest approach to the sun, was scheduled for October 20th, 2025, just about 150 million kilometers from the sun. Meanwhile, Atlas, which was following a slightly different path, would reach its perihelion on October 17th only 3 days earlier, skimming past the sun at about 203 million kilometers. The fact that two such massive objects were on a collision course with the sun within such a small time frame separated by just 50 million kilometers seemed impossible. Even more perplexing was the fact that their paths were not just close in terms of timing and distance, but also their orbits. SWAN and Atlas were on steeply inclined orbits, with SWAN's path tilting more than 60 degrees off the ecliptic plane, while Atlas's orbit was nearly perpendicular to it. This wasn't a simple case of overlapping paths. These objects came from vastly different parts of the sky, at nearly the same time, with very different angles. The chances of such a coincidence were astronomically low. The timing of this cosmic convergence was even stranger. Between October 8th and October 18th, Earth's telescopes would be blinded by the sun's glare. This solar conjunction meant that observers would not be able to directly track the objects during their closest approach to the sun. It was a rare blackout window that would prevent any real-time observations of unusual behavior during the critical period. When both SWAN and Atlas reached their perihelions, the solar flare would block observations of both objects, leaving scientists with no direct means of watching their behavior at the most crucial moment. To have two objects from such different origins, one possibly interstellar, converging on the Sun at nearly the same time, and at such similar distances, seemed beyond unlikely. The only way to understand this was if there were a deeper purpose behind their paths. The astronomers tracking these objects noted strange anomalies, particularly with Atlas. Instead of showing the typical water vapor signature found in most comets, Atlas was emitting a strange combination of gases. Spectral analysis revealed that the comet was primarily composed of nickel, with no significant presence of iron, which was highly unusual for comets. But the most startling discovery came when observers noticed odd accelerations in Atlas's motion. The object seemed to speed up in irregular bursts, spaced 2 weeks apart, each time coinciding with a change in the tail's color. These delta pulses, as they were dubbed, were not consistent with the smooth, outgassing behavior of typical comets. Instead, they resembled the kind of acceleration you would expect from a spacecraft's thrusters firing. The implications of these observations were astounding. The power needed to produce such accelerations, estimated at 10 gigawatts, was far beyond what any known comet nucleus could produce. Could Atlas be something more than a comet? Was it a probe? A spacecraft of some sort? The possibility that it was an engineered object, possibly sent on a mission, began to take hold. Then there was Swan. This object was even more mysterious. Its tail was far longer than any comet had ever produced, and its luminosity was off the charts. Swan's energy output seemed to rival the best comets in recent history, but the core itself was even more perplexing. Observers noted that it appeared to be made of a material that reflected light in a highly unusual way. The core had a metallic signature that some believed resembled a nickel-cobalt blend, materials often used in Earth-based spacecraft for their strength and resistance to corrosion. That wasn't all. As Swan neared the Sun, it began to display an optical anomaly, a persistent silvery halo that shifted in intensity and pattern. Some researchers speculated that this could be a plasma envelope, a kind of electromagnetic shield designed to protect the object from solar radiation and cosmic debris. The strange behavior of Swan only added to its enigmatic nature. While Atlas acted like a fast-moving drone, with rapid bursts of acceleration, Swan resembled something more formidable. It moved slowly and steadily, almost invulnerable, as if it were a tank in space. The tail itself seemed to pulse with rhythmic bursts of microthrusts, like tiny course corrections. If you're enjoying this deep dive into mysterious spacecraft, hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating space stories. The orbital characteristics of Swan were equally astonishing. This object was on a 22,554-year orbit, a cycle so long it brushed up against the last ice age. The implications were staggering. If this object had been engineered, it had been traveling on a preset course for longer than human civilization itself has existed. As Swan neared the Sun, the implications of its arrival grew even more significant. It wasn't just that it was here now, it was that it had been traveling along this path for thousands of years, possibly even longer. The timing of this event, combined with its massive energy output, raised more questions. Why had Swan arrived now? And why was it coinciding with Atlas, another object of similar mystery? One of the theories that quickly emerged was that these two objects might not just be visiting the Sun by chance, they could be using the Sun's energy for some kind of maintenance, refueling, or data exchange. Solar flybys are commonly used by spacecraft for gravitational assists and energy boosts. Could these objects, possibly probes, be using the Sun as a pit stop, recharging before continuing on their journey? Another, more ominous theory suggested that the close approach could be a mission of intervention. Perhaps these objects were here to recover or neutralize malfunctioning units, or maybe they represented competing factions in a larger cosmic operation. The strange acceleration patterns and bursts of energy suggested that these objects were not merely passive comets. They were active, maneuvering in ways that were hard to explain with natural processes alone. But the most compelling theory came from researchers who believed these objects might be responding to humanity's radio transmissions. Perhaps Oumuamua was the first visitor, followed by Atlas, and now Swan was the most advanced of them all, a response to humanity's century of radio signals, a message from distant explorers or even observers. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. The objects targeting the Sun, Swan, and Atlas were not ordinary comets. They were something else, something far more complex, and the questions surrounding their purpose and origin were far from answered. As astronomers scrambled for answers, a strange thing happened. On October 8, 2025, a solar conjunction blackout was imposed, and all major ground-based observatories were forced to cease their operations. The official reason given was routine maintenance, but behind the scenes, a quiet directive was issued to prevent any further investigation into Swan and Atlas during their critical approach. Requests for raw data were rerouted, and leaks from inside the scientific community suggested that higher powers were trying to suppress information about these mysterious objects. At the same time, the amateur astronomy community, led by figures like Bill Gray, began to rally. They knew that without the data from official sources, they were the only ones left who could track and report on the objects. The blackout became an invitation for amateur astronomers to take the lead in this search for answers. If Swan and Atlas were indeed part of a larger cosmic mission, it seemed that humanity's first opportunity to discover the truth might come from the unlikeliest of sources: backyard telescopes. Well, the story of Swan and Atlas may just be the beginning of something much bigger, a new chapter in our understanding of the universe and the strange objects that occasionally pass through our solar system. Their timing, their size, their energy output, all of these anomalies defy explanation. Whether they are alien probes, part of a galactic mission, or something else entirely, one thing is clear: the search for answers is only just beginning.